May June 2024, paper 2, variant 1 is your paper. 1 second. Sure. So let's start with this paper. So let's see the first question. A ball is at rest, uh, is released from rest at point A. Okay. So initially the ball is at rest at point A. The kinetic energy is zero here. Perfect. And moves along a smooth track. That means friction is zero. Perfect. A, B, C, D, E. Perfect. As shown in figure 1.1. Perfect. The ball is shown at point A and as it passes point B. Perfect. The ball is in contact with the track and air resistance is negligible. Perfect. Let's further move ahead. क्या लिखा हुआ है? Figure 1.2 shows the distance time graph for the ball as it moves from A to E. Perfect. So basically, we have the distance time graph for the ball as it moves from A towards E. Okay. This is the distance time graph. Perfect. On figure 1.2, mark with the letter P one point where the ball accelerates. Okay. You have to mark one point where the ball accelerates. First of all, you need to remember the gradient of distance time graph is equals to what? Speed. Out of the entire graph, can you see somewhere जहां पे gradient increase हो रहा हो? बेटा can you see any part of the graph जहां पे gradient increase हो रहा हो? Yes. This part of the graph. Here the gradient is increasing. If the gradient here is increasing, that means the velocity here is, or the speed here is increasing. That means we have acceleration in this region. So we can mark any point in this yellow highlighted region. Let me mark this point as my point P. Let's erase all of this. Okay. With the letter Q, mark one point where the ball has a constant speed. Okay. We have to mark one point where the ball has a constant speed. Now, if you have a constant speed, what do we mean by that? बेटा कांस्टेंट स्पीड का क्या मतलब होता है? यस, एनीवन इन द चैट? कांस्टेंट स्पीड is equals to constant gradient. Out of this entire curve, where can I see a constant gradient? Here. This entire line is a constant gradient line. So maybe I can mark point Q somewhere here. यहाँ पे mark कर देते. Let's mark point Q here. Perfect. All clear. Determine the speed of the ball at point X on figure 1.2. Show your working. Perfect. Let's see point X. This is point X. You have to determine the speed here. The only key point that you need to remember is this. Gradient of distance time graph is equals to speed. Beta, the only key point that you need to remember is what? Gradient of distance time graph is speed. Okay. Now, यहाँ पे how will you calculate the gradient? It's not that easy. Why? Because this is a curve. Point X lies on a curve. How do we calculate the gradients of curves? We draw a tangent on that point. We draw a tangent on that point like this. Like this. Whenever you have to calculate, you can write it here. The gradient of curve is calculated by drawing a tangent. Is calculated by drawing a tangent. Now, you can extend this tangent line as well. Somewhat like this. Now, you can take 2 points here. बेटा टेंजेंट पे कोई दो पॉइंट्स ले लो. आई थिंक दिस टेंजेंट इज स्लाइटली, इसको इस तरह कर देना. Yeah, somewhat like this. Okay. Let's take 2 points on the tangent. Which 2 points to take? Let's take this one. This is this is 1.15 in the x-axis, and on the y-axis we have 2.1. Perfect. What is another point that we can take here? Maybe this point. This is zero point 0.5 in the x-axis and zero point 0.5 in the y-axis. Can I calculate the gradient here, bhai? Can I calculate the gradient here? Yes. Gradient calculate karte hain. Gradient is equals to 2.1 minus 1.1, no, sorry. 2.1 minus 0.5. This is your y2. This is your y1. This is your x2. This is your x1. 1.15 minus 0.5. What does your answer for gradient comes out to be? भाई ग्रेडियंट का आंसर मुझे निकाल के बताओ. यस, शाबाश. हु विल टेल मी द आंसर ऑफ ग्रेडियंट? बेटा सिर्फ आपने कर्व पे टेंजेंट बनाना है और उस टेंजेंट पे 2 पॉइंट लेके ग्रेडियंट निकाल देना है. सिंपल, नथिंग कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हियर. 1.15 minus 0.5. This comes out to be 2.46. Your gradient is 2.4 ms minus 1. Why? Because we have to calculate the speed. So the speed at point x is 2.4 ms minus 1. Nothing complicated here. Let's further move ahead. The speed of the ball at A, B, C, D are VA, VB, VC, VD respectively. Arrange these four speeds from slowest to the fastest. बेटा अब यहाँ पे आपको अकल चाहिए थी. थोड़ी सी अकल बोरो करनी थी आपने. You have to arrange these speeds from the slowest to the fastest. How will you do that? Very easy. Beta, the point where the ball is at the maximum height, the point where the ball is at the maximum height, it will have the slowest speed, and we also know at point A it is at rest. So the speed at A will be the slowest, VA. Then what will be the second slowest speed? Point C. Why? Because it is at the second highest height. Point C लिख दो भाई यहाँ पे. What will be the third slowest speed? Point D. And what will be the fastest speed? B. V, D, V, B. Work is done to transfer energy between energy stores as ball moves from A to B. Name the force involved in the work done and describe the energy transfer. Wow. As we are traveling from A to B, work is getting transferred. Okay. We have to name that. As we are transferring from A to D, या A to B, as we are going from A to B, बेटा क्या हो रहा है? If you see, as we are going from A to B, we are losing height. Gravitational potential energy is decreasing. And there is an increase in kinetic energy. Yep. Zara correct. Perfect. Chalo, let's move ahead. Let's write this in a neat and clean manner. You will first of all say, work is done. Work is done by gravity as gravitational potential energy. As gravitational potential energy gets converted into what? Gets converted into kinetic energy. Perfect, nothing complicated. Let's move on to part D. The track at point B is circular in shape. Perfect. Draw an arrow to show the direction of the resultant force on the ball at point P. बेटा जब भी आप सर्कल में मूव कर रहे होते हो, लेट मी शो यू, जब भी आप सर्कल में मूव कर रहे होते हो, वेयर इज द डायरेक्शन ऑफ द रिजल्टेंट फोर्स? टूवर्ड्स द सेंटर, like this is your resultant force, because whenever you are moving in a circle, आपकी रिजल्टेंट फोर्स या डायरेक्शन ऑफ फोर्स कहाँ होती है? टूवर्ड्स द सेंटर ऑफ द सर्कल. एंड बेटा इफ यू एग्जामिन सर्कल किस तरह बन रहा है यहाँ पे, somewhat like this is your circle. Now we are done with question 1. If you have any queries, tell भाई क्या queries हैं तुम लोगों की. Okay, let's see this. A small aircraft takes off from horizontal deck of a ship. Perfect. Before taking off, the aircraft is held in place by a hold back bar. Perfect. तो ये कुछ सिस्टम यहाँ पे बना हुआ है, ठीक है. When the holdback bar is released, the aircraft is pulled along the deck by a steam powered piston as shown in figure 2.1. Perfect. So, what is happening here? We have a piston here, we have a cable, and we have a deck. Perfect. Pipe open to atmosphere, tank containing steam and boiling water. We have holdback bar. Perfect. And ठीक है. ओके ओके ओके. व्हेन द होल्ड बैक बार इज रिलीज, जब आप इस बार को रिलीज करते हो बेटा, व्हेन यू रिमूव दिस बार, व्हाट हैपेंस? व्हाट हैपेंस? द एयरक्राफ्ट इज पुल्ड अलोंग लाइक दिस बाय द पिस्टन. ओके, चलो लेट्स सी व्हाट द एग्जामिनर इज ट्राइंग टू आस्क. द steam exerts a high pressure on the piston. ठीक है, let's see here. The steam is exerting a high pressure on the piston. Perfect. Explain using ideas about particles how the steam creates a pressure on the piston. Beta, we have discussed this in कल का past paper as well. Sunday की class में we have studied this. How does steam creates pressure? Anyone? Yup, very good. दूर than anyone else? Anyone else जिसने previous class ली हो बेटा, सवाल repeat करते हैं. You must remember. How does steam creates a pressure? Particles hit the walls of the container. Particles hit the walls of the container. You can write this: particle hit the walls of container. As they hit the walls of the container, particles hit the wall of the container and exert a force on the wall. This force per unit area, this force per unit area gives rise to pressure. Simple. Let's further move ahead. Explain why the pressure on the piston increases as the temperature of the steam increases. बेटा संडे की क्लास में ये भी डिस्कस हुआ था. संडे की क्लास में ये भी डिस्कस हुआ था. Why does pressure increase as temperature increases? Because as temperature increases, as temperature increases, what happens? The kinetic energy, the kinetic energy of particles increase, and hence they hit more frequently, and hence they hit the walls of the container. They hit the walls of container more frequently, more frequently, this increases the pressure. This increases the pressure. Simple as that, nothing complicated here. Let's further move ahead. When the pressure is high enough, the holdback bar is released. Perfect. The steam pushes the piston along the pipe shown in figure 2.1. हमने बेटा ये पहले ही आइडेंटिफाई कर लिया है कि स्टीम जो है पिस्टन को राइट साइड पे पुश करेगी. परफेक्ट. नाउ द पिस्टन हैज अ क्रॉस सेक्शनल एरिया ऑफ दिस. परफेक्ट. पिस्टन का क्रॉस सेक्शनल एरिया क्या है भाई? 0.3 मीटर स्क्वायर. The pressure of the steam in the tank is this. Perfect. Atmospheric pressure is this. Perfect. Determine the resultant force on the piston caused by the pressure difference. Show your working. बेटा अगेन समथिंग जो हमने प्रीवियस क्लास में भी डिस्कस किया है. सिमिलर लॉजिक डिस्कस की है. देखो दैट्स व्हाई इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू प्रैक्टिस रीसेंट ईयर के पास पेपर्स. सारे सवाल रिपीट हो रहे होते हैं. So what is happening here? What is happening here? If you analyze, can you see this piston has the same area? From the outward, we are applying atmospheric pressure. This is your area A. Pressure is equals to force over area. Pressure atmospheric into area is your force from the left hand side. ये आ गई आपकी लेफ्ट हैंड साइड की फोर्स. ओके. व्हाट इज द प्रेशर ऑफ द स्टीम? स्टीम का प्रेशर क्या है? 2.1 into 10 is the power of 6. So let's say the steam is applying a pressure like this on the same area. It will also generate a force. Let's label this as F1. Let's label this as F2. आपने रिजल्टेंट फोर्स निकालनी है बेटा. हाउ विल यू कैलकुलेट दैट? हाउ विल? यस, वेरी गुड अब्बास, वेरी गुड. यू विल सब्ट्रैक्ट द फोर्सेस. पहले F1 निकाल लो, फिर F2 निकाल लो, subtract both the forces. Okay. Since I want to keep this diagram in the picture, I will be doing the working here. Force F1 किसके इक्वल है बेटा? P atmospheric into area. What is P atmospheric? It was given नीचे 1 into 10 raised to the power of 5. Area क्या है? 0.3. So let's write it here. 1 into 10 raised to the power of 5 into 0.3. फोर्स F1 क्या आ जाएगी? एनी जीनियसेस इन द चैट, एनीवन विद अ कैलकुलेटर एंड अ सेन इनफ माइंड? दिस कम्स आउट टू बी 30,000 न्यूटन. This comes out to be 30,000 Newton. Can I calculate F2? Yep, I can also do that. F2 चलो मैं ब्लू से निकाल देता हूँ so that you have a differentiation. F2 is equals to the pressure 2 multiplied by area. ये pressure 2 कर देते हैं. ठीक है. What is the pressure 2? The pressure of the steam 2.1 into 10 is the power of 6. Okay, let's write it here. 2.1 into 10 is the power of 6 into the area that is 0.3. What comes out to be your answer? 2.1 into 10 is the power of 6 into 0.3. Answer क्या आ जाएगा बेटा? Your answer comes out to be 630,000 Newton. Can you calculate the resultant force? Yep, you can do that. 630,000 minus 300. This comes out to be 6,000 newtons as your answer. All clear. Any ambiguities here? Yes बेटा, कोई सवाल कोई मसला है यहाँ पे? अच्छा, इसको मैं एक काम करता हूँ कि अच्छा, वन मोर थिंग, दीज पास पेपर्स, ये जो मैं लिख रहा हूँ सारी चीज़ें एनोटेटेड ड्राइव पे अपलोड हो जाएंगी गूगल ड्राइव पे. यू डोंट नीड टू बी फ्रस्ट्रेटेड या हेजिटेटेड कि हम जल्दी से ये कॉपी कर लें. बस ये सब अपलोड हो जाएगा. बस सुनने में ध्यान लगाओ, अंडरस्टैंडिंग में ध्यान लगाओ. ठीक है. चल, दिस इज योर आंसर हियर. परफेक्ट. लेट्स फर्दर मूव अहेड. The force calculated in B causes the aircraft to accelerate to a maximum speed of this perfect from rest. Okay. So your initial velocity was 0, final velocity is this. The mass of the aircraft is this. Calculate the momentum of the aircraft at the maximum speed. What is the formula of momentum? Momentum is equals to mass into velocity. What is mass? 3 into 10 raised to the power of 4. What is the maximum speed? 28. Can you calculate this answer? 3 into 10 raised to the power of 4 into 28. The answer comes out to be 8.4 into 10 raised to the power of 5. 8.4 into 10 raised to the power of 5 kg ms minus 1 is your answer. Calculate the time taken for the aircraft to reach the maximum speed भाई. Maximum speed reach करने का time निकालना है हमने. How can we do that? First of all, we can calculate the acceleration. How? F is equals to ma. What is the resultant force? Balki there is a further easy way. There is a further easy way to calculate time. What have we studied? Resultant force is equals to change in momentum over change in time. Do you have the resultant force? Yes, 6 into 10 raised to the power of 5. Do you have the change in momentum? 8.4 into 10 raised to the power of 5. Can you calculate the change in time or delta t or the time? Yes. Time comes out to be what? Can anyone tell me in the chat? Time comes out to be 1.4 seconds. Simple as that. This marks the end of question number 2. Shoot away your questions. कोई भी confusion है, ambiguities हैं, पूछो भाई. Very good. Now, a pan containing ice at minus 15 degree centigrade is placed on a gas heater as shown in figure 3.1. ठीक है भाई. एक पैन है जिसमें आइस ही आइस है, ये सारी आइस है, ठीक है. This is at negative 15 degree centigrade. It is placed on a gas heater. Perfect. Thermal conduction occurs in the metal from which pan is made by referring to particles that describe the process of thermal conduction in metal. Now, who was present in Sunday की क्लास? बताया था मैंने थर्मल कंडक्शन किस तरह होती है मेटल में. Yes, vibrating molecules hit the electrons. Electrons move through the metal. As they move through the metal, they collide with the particles transferring thermal energy. लिखवाया था कुछ इस तरह का? नहीं लिखवाया था सर? इलेक्ट्रॉन्स एंड एटम्स वाला. यस. लेट्स राइट इट अगेन भाई. याद हो जाना चाहिए एग्जाम तक. याद हो जाना चाहिए एग्जाम तक. व्हाट विल यू से? वाइब्रेटिंग मॉलिक्यूल्स और वाइब्रेटिंग पार्टिकल्स collide with the electrons transferring energy. Electrons are free to move and move from the colder end, sorry, move from the hotter end to the colder end, move from the hotter end to the colder end. What happens as they move from the hotter end to the colder end? As they move from the hotter end to the colder end, they hit the particles of the colder end. Electrons are free to move and move from the hotter end to the colder end. As they move, they hit with particles transferring energy. Transferring energy. बेटा कुछ भी कॉम्प्लिकेटेड नहीं लिखा. लिटरली एक सिंगल लव भी यहां पे कॉम्प्लिकेटेड नहीं लिखा. चलो लेट्स फर्दर मूव अहेड. Figure 3.2 shows the temperature of the contents of the pan varies with time. ठीक है. This टेम्परेचर ऑफ द पैन इज वेरिंग विद टाइम, ठीक है। ओके, आई हैवंट रेड अभी आगे, अभी बेटा मैंने आगे नहीं पढ़ा, बट व्हाट इज अ स्मॉल लिटिल ट्रिक आई हैव टोल्ड यू। पहले से ही इफ यू मेक assumptions इन द एग्जाम एंड इफ दे कम ट्रू, योर कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल स्काई रॉकेट्स। ये कांस्टेंट हो रही है लाइन, दिस टेल्स यू व्हाट, here we might have melting, and since it is 0 degree centigrade, this is confirming के इस लाइन में melting हो रही है। perfect, I know this much. State the melting temperature of ice in Kelvin. Wow, isn't it beautiful? Without seeing the question, the thing that you analyzed is being asked by the examiner. But here, don't get carried away. Don't get carried away. This temperature isn't 0 degree centigrade. You have to write the temperature in Kelvins. So, beta, write down this conversion. Degree centigrade plus 273 is equals to your Kelvin. So, if degree is 0, your Kelvin will be 273. Simple as that. Nothing complicated here. अब next part पे आ जाओ. Explain why the temperature of the water is constant as the ice melts. Beta, why is the temperature of the water constant as the ice melts? The energy supplied is used to do what? The energy supplied is used to weaken the intermolecular forces. The energy supplied is used to weaken the intermolecular forces. So you can write it here. The energy supplied is used to weaken the intermolecular forces of attraction, and this causes the particles to move away from each other, each other. Simple as that. Let's further move ahead. The initial mass of ice in the pan is this. This is your mass. The initial temperature is negative 15 degrees centigrade. The specific heat capacity of ice is this. Calculate the energy required to warm the ice to its melting temperature. Beta, what is the melting temperature? 0 degree centigrade. You have to calculate Q. What is the formula of Q? Q is equals to mc delta T. What is the mass? 1.5. What is the specific heat capacity? 2100. What is the change in temperature? 15 degrees centigrade. Can you calculate the answer? 1.5 into 210 into 15. This comes out to be 47250 joules as your answer. Nothing complicated here. However, and then if you write it till three significant figures, this will become 47300 joules. अच्छा, let me see another question as well. भाई एक और बड़ा अच्छा क्वेश्चन आया. Sir, what will happen? Now all of you listen to this. What will happen if the examiner would have written freeze here? What would have happened if the liquid is freezing to solid? Then what will we say? Intermolecular bonds are formed, or intermolecular forces strengthen. And what further you will say? You will say energy is released. If you are asked about freezing, बेटा ये freezing के केस में होगा. This will be for the case of freezing. ठीक है, चलो, I hope all questions are answered. Let's further move ahead. all the energy transferred to the pan comes from the heater. Perfect. Use your answer in part 3 and figure 3.2 to determine the power of the heater used to warm the ice. Perfect. क्या बात की है? Very good. Very interesting. So you have to calculate what? You have to calculate the power of the heater. बेटा पावर का क्या फॉर्मूला होता था? पावर यूज टू बी एनर्जी ओवर टाइम. डू यू हैव द एनर्जी? यस. 47250. वेयर विल यू ब्रिंग द टाइम फ्रॉम? टाइम कहां से लाओगे? टाइम, if you notice, you are going from negative 15 degree centigrade to 0 degree centigrade. This is your increase in temperature. What is the time taken for this? 2 minutes. What is the time taken for this? 2 minutes. Okay. So place 2 minutes here. But make sure you convert 2 minutes into seconds. 2 into 60. Power का आंसर क्या आ जाएगा? The answer to power comes out to be 390 watts. The graph in figure 3.2 has a smaller gradient when water is liquid than when water is solid. Okay, then when it is solid. Perfect. Suggest one reason why. अच्छा क्या पूछ रहा है भाई? If you notice here, the gradient of the green line is smaller compared to the gradient of the blue line. Why is that the case? Examiner ये पूछ रहा है why the gradient of green line is smaller compared to the gradient of the blue line. एग्जामिनर पूछ रहा है ऐसा वाटर में क्या पानी में चेंज हो जाता है कि द ग्रेडियंट ऑफ द green line is less compared to the gradient of the blue line. What can you say here? Yep, yep. What can you say here? बेटा water और ये green line has stronger bonds. Hence, it is difficult to increase temperature. Simple. All clear? Yes or no? Tell me in the chat, bhai. Yes. Water does has stronger bonds. Yes, liquid में उसके stronger bonds होते हैं भाई. Hence, it requires greater energy to create an increase in temperature. Is question number 3 clear to all of you? बेटा मुझे बताओ question number 3 clear है सबको? Ultrasound frequency 30k hertz has a wavelength of this in here. तो बेटा ये जो k लिखा हुआ है this means what? This means kilo. Ultrasounds of frequency 30 kilohertz have a wavelength of this in here. State what is meant by frequency. Okay, what is meant by frequency? Frequency is what? Number of oscillations or number of waves passing per unit second. A number of waves per unit second, number of oscillations per unit second. Number of oscillations per unit time. Calculate the speed of ultrasound in air. You have to calculate the speed of sound in air. Speed of ultrasound in air. V is equals to F lambda लगा दो. F is what? 30,000. 30 into 10 is the power of 3 into lambda, that is 0.011. This comes out to be what by velocity का आंसर क्या आ जाएगा? Yes, any geniuses? Velocity का आंसर comes out to be 330 ms minus 1. अच्छा लास्ट पार्ट रह गया था इसका. Didn't I told you? Suggest one reason why figure 3.2 में we have a smaller gradient in liquid than compared to solid. अच्छा चलो ये भी मैं explain कर देता हूँ. Okay, so this was left in the last class, I guess. So why this green line has a smaller gradient compared to the blue line? So what would you say here? Liquid has stronger bonds, hence it is difficult to raise its temperature. Hence it has a lower gradient. You can write this by. If somebody didn't wrote it, कल भाई आज लिख सकते हो यार. You can write this. You can write this. Water has stronger bonds, hence a higher energy, hence a higher energy is required to cause change in temperature. ठीक है, if someone didn't wrote this earlier, you can write it right now. Let's further move ahead. Let's further move ahead. Now, state one use of ultrasound. Beta, what is one use of ultrasound? There are several uses of ultrasound that you must know. One use में आप कुछ भी लिख सकते हो. You can either write cleaning jewelry, prenatal scanning, prenatal scanning. What is an other use of ultrasound? Can anyone remember any other use भाई? कोई और use remember कर सकते हो? It is used in sonars, in submarines, etc. Sound waves are longitudinal waves. Water waves are transverse waves. Describe by referring to the movement of particles in the wave, the difference between a longitudinal wave and a transverse wave. You may include a diagram to help your description. Yes, transverse wave और longitudinal waves के बीच में description बतानी है by referring to the movement of particles. By referring to the movement of particles. Very good, Duryodhan. Very good. Very good. How will you tell this? Yes. How will you tell this, beta? Anyone else? In longitudinal waves. In longitudinal waves, the particles ही लिखा हुआ था ना, I guess. 1 second. Yeah. The particle move in parallel to the direction of wave travel. To the direction of wave travel. In longitudinal waves, the particle move what? In parallel to the direction of wave travel. And in transverse wave, what happens? बेटा transverse wave में क्या होता है? Let me write it in blue. In transverse wave, the particles move perpendicular perpendicular to the direction of wave travel. And बेटा it is advantageous. देखो, जब भी एग्जामिनर जगह देता है ना डायग्राम की, वेन एवर द एग्जामिनर प्रोवाइड्स यू विथ स्पेस, ठीक है, वेन एवर, मैं बताता हूँ, अब बात में बताता हूँ, उसी पे आ रहा हूँ बेटा. वेन एवर द एग्जामिनर प्रोवाइड्स यू द स्पेस टू मेक अ डायग्राम, आप डायग्राम बनाओ. देखो, जब आपको कोई बंदा इज्जत दे रहा है, लाइक द एग्जामिनर इज गिविंग यू सम इज्जत बाय प्रोवाइडिंग यू विथ सम स्पेस टू ड्रॉ अ डायग्राम, व्हाई आर यू इंसल्टिंग हिम बाय लीविंग दिस डायग्राम ब्लैंक? The third mark here was for the diagram. The third mark here was for the diagram. How will you draw the diagram here, bhai? How will you draw the diagram here? Very, very easy. You will first of all write, bhai. Longitudinal wave के लिए पहले बना देते हैं. Longitudinal wave. You can make a spring like like this. You can say This is the movement of particles. And this is what? This is the direction of wave travel. This is a compression, rarefaction, compression, rarefaction, compression. Okay. Let's move on to a transverse wave. Transverse wave. In transverse wave, you can draw somewhat like this. Let's say this is a fixed end, and let's say this is your direction of particles, and let's say this is movement of wave. Simple. State one source of waves that generate both longitudinal and transverse wave. ये बड़ा interesting सवाल था. State one source that generates both longitudinal and transverse. Hmm. Yes, yes, yes. Any ideas? Earthquake. Earthquake. Earthquake generates both longitudinal and transverse wave. Longitudinal क्या होता है? Sound wave. और वाइब्रेशन जो होती हैं earthquake की वजह से दे आर ट्रांसफर वेव. ठीक है. चलो जी, लेट्स फिर देन मूव अहेड. हाँ हाँ, दैट्स डेफिनेटली रॉन्ग बेटा. दैट्स डेफिनेटली रॉन्ग. चलो. Figure 4.1 shows radio waves of long and short wavelength passing over the same hill. Now, if you are a good student, you will instantly realize यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है. बेटा अगर आपकी वेवलेंथ ज्यादा है, this one, can you see diffraction is happening? And if your wavelength is small, can you see the amount of diffraction has decreased? Let's see. Explain why the radio waves in the diagram A reach the house, but the radio waves in the diagram B does not reach the house. Very, very easy to explain. By how will you write it? You will say the radio waves in diagram A have long wavelength. Hence they diffract more. They reach the house. इसको लिख लेते हैं भाई, लिख देते हैं ताकि आप लोग को याद रहे. The radio waves. The radio waves in the radio waves in diagram A have a larger wavelength. Hence, they diffract more and reach the house. Reach the house. However, radio waves in B have a shorter wavelength and diffract less. And diffract less. Simple, nothing complicated. Let's further move ahead. Okay, what do we have here? Figure 5.1 shows part of a circuit containing 240 volts main supply connected to a lamp and two heaters of resistance 40 ohms and 60 ohms. Perfect. Complete figure 5.1 by drawing the symbol for a fuse in the gap in the circuit. So we have to draw the symbol for a fuse. How does a fuse look like? Somewhat like this. On figure 5.2, sketch the current versus voltage graph for a filament lamp. Always remember that the current versus voltage graph for a filament lamp is a decreasing curve like this. Explain the shape of the current versus voltage graph drawn in 1. So we have to explain the shape of this current versus voltage graph in the figure 5.1. So what will you say? As voltage increases, temperature increases. This causes the molecules to vibrate faster, hence resistance increases. Hence resistance increases. So beta, how will you write this answer? क्या कहोगे आप? You will say as the voltage increases. सर इनवर्स बेटा इसका इनवर्स का ग्राफ अगर पूछेगा तो बनाओगे वरना नहीं बनाओगे, ठीक है? अच्छा नाउ 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 इफ बेटा पहले सुन लो क्या हो रहा है यहाँ पे. As the voltage is increasing, the temperature is increasing. भाई टेम्परेचर इंक्रीज होगा तो व्हाट विल हैपन? टेम्परेचर इंक्रीज होगा तो व्हाट विल हैपन? इफ द टेम्परेचर increases, what will happen? Yes, your molecules will start to vibrate quickly. As your molecules start to vibrate quickly, your resistance increases. As your resistance increases, क्या होगा? Yep, you will have this sort of a graph. Simple. किसी को इस ग्राफ में मसला भाई? Does anyone has any problems in this graph? बेटा ask away. One sec. Clear है सर? चलो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह यार. बेटा कोई भी मसला हो, आई हैव नॉट रिपीटेड दिस इस क्लास में, बट अगर कोई भी मसला हो तो पूछ लिया करो. देयर इज नो हेजिटेशन इन इट. कैलकुलेट द करंट एट पॉइंट पी इन द सर्किट शोन इन फिगर 5.1. अच्छा पॉइंट पी है क्या? दिस इज पॉइंट पी. So we have to calculate the current at this point. Wow, interesting. How can we calculate the current at this point? If you thoda sa notice, how can I calculate the current at this point? Any ideas? Any ideas how can you calculate the current at this point? Very, very, very easy. If you realize that you can make this circuit like this, you can make this circuit like this. ये लैंप आ गया and you can combine these two parallel resistors. You can combine these two parallel resistors. What will be the total resistance? 1 upon RT, 1 upon 40 plus 1 upon 60. Your total resistance will come out to be what? Yes, total resistance क्या आ जाएगी? Let me calculate it. Total resistance comes out to be 24. ठीक है. So instead of making them separately, I will make a 24 ohm resistor like this. Perfect. I have to calculate the current at point P. इस point पे मैंने current निकालना है. So if you realize, if we have 240 volts here, we will have 240 volts here, we will have 240 volts here. Perfect. For this resistor, you have the voltage as well, resistance as well. Can you calculate the current at P? Yes, V is equals to IR. Voltage is 240, resistance is 24. Current comes out to be what? 10 ampere is your simple current. Do you guys get this? समझ आई बेटा? The current in the lamp is 1.5 amperes. Okay, so the current in the lamp is 1.5 amperes. Suggest a suitable rating for the fuse. Okay. So, beta अब हो ये रहा है कि you have a current here of 10 ampere and you have a current in this lamp 1.5 ampere. What will be the total current? What will be the total current at, let's say, this point? The total current at this point will be 11.5 ampere. So your fuse should be of, let's say, 12 ampere. Your fuse should be slightly greater than the total current. 12 ampere is the correct answer. Explain why a fuse rating much larger than the value in 1 is not suitable. अच्छा. Examiner कह रहे हैं बेटा कि why a fuse rating larger than the one calculated in part 1 is not suitable. So basically examiner is saying that let's say आप फ्यूज रेटिंग 12 की जगह है 100 ampere रख दो. Why is that not suitable? Why is that not suitable? Yes, because then the fuse will not melt even when the current is large. ठीक है? When the current is large, the fuse does not melt. और बेटा फ्यूज का पर्पस क्या होता है? कभी आप लोगों ने अगर फ्यूज की थ्योरी पढ़ी हो रिकॉर्डेड लेक्चर्स में से या लाइव क्लासेस में से, यू माइट नो फ्यूज का पर्पस क्या होता है बेटा. Fuse prevents the circuit from getting damaged when a large amount of current flows in the fuse. ठीक है, when a large amount of current flows in the circuit, तो फ्यूज क्या करता है, ब्लो ऑफ हो जाता है एंड इट प्रिवेंट्स द सर्किट. अच्छा, इफ यू मेक द फ्यूज ऑफ अ वेरी लार्ज वैल्यू, इफ यू मेक द फ्यूज ऑफ अ वेरी लार्ज वैल्यू, क्या होगा? यस, the fuse will not blow off even when the current is large. So you can write this here. You can write this here. You can simply write this here. If the fuse rating is larger, then if the fuse rating is larger, this will this will take a second. Yeah, okay. Yes, you can say that. Yes, you can say that. Yes, you can say that. Okay. If the fuse rating is large enough, what will happen? This will cause large amount of current to flow through the circuit. This will cause a large amount of current to flow through the circuit, and the fuse will not melt. Simple. Explain why is it necessary to connect a fuse in the live wire rather than the neutral wire or earth wire? Why do we connect the fuse in the live wire? Yes, why do we connect the fuse in the live wire? Because voltage या current is first of all supplied to the live wire. ठीक है? When voltage or current is supplied to the live wire, we must place the fuse in the live wire. ठीक है? Since voltage is supplied by the live wire, fuse must also be placed in the live wire. Fuse must also be placed in the live wire. Perfect. Figure 6.1 shows the structure of a simple electric motor. Perfect. This is an electric motor. As soon as you see an electric motor, you know what? इस सवाल में क्या लगेगा? Fleming's left hand rule. As soon as you see electric motor, you know Fleming's left hand rule लगेगा. The current in the coil causes the coil to rotate. Perfect. A student notices that the coil turns in the direction shown by the curved arrow in figure 6.1. ठीक है, direction of rotation. State what happens to the motor if a stronger magnet is used. Yes, what will happen if the stronger magnet is used? The motor will turn faster. You can say motor turns faster. You can say the motor turns faster. Simple. On figure 6.1, mark and label the direction of the current in the coil and the direction of the magnetic field. Perfect. So the direction of the magnetic field is very easy to mark from north to south like this. अच्छा, one thing that you guys must always remember is, बेटा जब भी आपने डायरेक्शन ऑफ करंट मार्क करनी है, जब सिर्फ करंट लिखा हुआ है तो यू हैव टू मार्क व्हाट? you have to mark the direction of conventional current. ऑलवेज रिमेंबर जब भी आपने सिर्फ करंट की डायरेक्शन मार्क करनी है यू हैव टू मार्क द डायरेक्शन ऑफ कन्वेंशनल करंट. और यहाँ पे लिख लो, सी आई ऑल्सो मेड अ मिस्टेक हियर, देखो मुझसे भी मिस्टेक हो जाती है, तो यहाँ पे लिख लो कन्वेंशनल करंट फ्लोज फ्रॉम व्हाट, पॉजिटिव टू नेगेटिव. एंड अगर आपसे इलेक्ट्रॉन फ्लो के बारे में पूछ रहा है, इफ द एग्जामिनर इज आस्किंग यू हाउ डू इलेक्ट्रॉन्स फ्लो, then electrons flow from negative to positive. So here your direction of current will be somewhat like this. This. देखो गलती हो जाती है, ठीक है, तो you must remember this. A very important key point to remember, conventional current flows from positive to negative. Electron flow flows from negative to positive. ठीक है. ठीक है. आप क्लियर है? I was confused about it वाले बच्चे को. Is it clear? अच्छा, एक्सप्लेन व्हाई द कॉइल टर्न्स. वेरी वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन. व्हाई द कॉइल टर्न्स, 2 मार्क का सवाल है. व्हाई द कॉइल टर्न्स, कॉइल टर्न क्यों होता है? व्हाई डज द कॉइल टर्न्स, एनी आइडिया? व्हाई डज द कॉइल टर्न्स? बेटा, टू टर्न एनीथिंग, टू टर्न एनीथिंग यू नीड अ व्हाट, यू नीड अ मोमेंट. अच्छा, मोमेंट कैसे क्रिएट होगा यहाँ पे? लेट्स सी. नाउ सिट बैक एंड रिलैक्स, आई नीड योर अनडिवाइडेड अटेंशन. बेटा, इफ आई कंसिडर ये वाली साइड, इफ आई कंसिडर दिस येलो वाली साइड, प्लीज 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 बेटा सारे अपना लेफ्ट हैंड निकालो, सारे अपना लेफ्ट हैंड निकालो एंड एनालाइज that if you place the first finger of your left hand like this is your magnetic field. The second finger pointing outward, that is the current, like this. The second finger pointing outward like this, that is the current. Perfect. बेटा, where will your force point? Force कहाँ पे point करेगा? Force will point upward. So basically the force at this point points upward. Okay. Now apply the same logic here. Apply the same logic at this blue highlighted area. बेटा सेम लॉजिक अप्लाई करो बट एट द ब्लू हाईलाइटेड एरिया. You know that the magnetic field will be inward, but now the current, sorry, magnetic field will be like this. Current will be inward. Where will your force point? Yes, genius is. Where will your force point? Force will point downward like this. This is your direction of force. Can you see this force and this force are creating what? They are creating a clockwise movement. Hence the coil rotates. बेटा सबको ये बात समझ आई? आगे बढ़े, चलो लेट्स राइट दिस आंसर. भाई इसको आंसर राइटिंग में भी पुट इन करते हैं, समझ तो हमने अच्छा सा लिया है, आंसर राइटिंग में भी पुट इन करते हैं. लेट्स पुट इट इन आंसर राइटिंग. सो यू विल से फोर्स, force on the left side of the coil is upwards. Force on the left side of the coil is upward. ठीक है, अपवर्ड ही है ना लेफ्ट साइड पे. 1 सेकेंड. Yeah, force on the left side is upward and force on the right side of the coil is downward. This this causes a clockwise movement है ना? हाँ, clockwise movement and the coil rotates. बेटा अगर आपने इस तरह आंसर लिखा ना तो एग्जामिनर आपका फैन हो जाएगा. If you write answers like this, examiner will become your fan. ठीक है, अब आगे बढ़ते हैं. Let's see this. Two vertical wires carry current in opposite directions. Perfect. They pass at right angles through a piece of card as shown in figure 6.2. ठीक है. Figure 6.3 is a view of the card from above. Perfect. So this is a view of the card from above. Okay. Always remember, if current is being carried in opposite directions, the wires will repel each other. On figure 6.3, sketch the pattern of the magnetic field line produced. Indicate the direction of the magnetic field line pattern that you made. Perfect. So do you guys remember this topic? भाई कितने students को ये topic याद भी है? Do you remember that current carrying into the page? जब भी वायर करंट, हाँ हाँ पूछो बेटा, सवाल पूछो. यस 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 यस. आस्क. आस्क अवे. क्या सवाल? Whenever current was being carried into the page, whenever current was being carried into the page, do you remember किस तरह की मैग्नेटिक फील्ड लाइंस बनती थी? Let me show you. ये रही. Whenever a wire used to carry current into the page, I had it. Yeah. जब भी वायर कैरी करता था करंट इनटू द पेज, यू हैड clockwise direction. And whenever it used to carry out of the page, you had anti-clockwise direction. And if both of them had opposite directions of current, आपका field line कुछ इस तरह बनता था. So let's draw this. Let's draw this here. चलो इसको draw करते हैं. Now you can say, since it is carrying current into the page, you will have somewhat like this. और क्या होगी? Clockwise direction like this. And current carrying into the page का क्या होगा भाई? Anti-clockwise like this. Like this. अच्छा, जब भी मैग्नेटिक फील्ड लाइंस ड्रॉ करनी होगी, whenever you have to draw magnetic field lines, you will always make sure you at least draw three magnetic field lines. So yeah, these are your magnetic field lines. सर इसके लिए मेरे स्कूल वाला सर ने राइट हैंड ग्रिप रूल पढ़ाया है, या यू कैन अप्लाई दैट एज वेल, बट दो ही तरह के वायर्स हैं, यू कैन रिमेम्बर इट. देर आर ओनली टू टाइप्स ऑफ वायर्स. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि चार पांच वायर्स हैं. करंट कैरिंग आउट ऑफ द वेपर विल हैव एंटी क्लॉकवाइज. Current going into the paper will have clockwise. Some students like to do this by Maxwell's right hand grip rule. But that's an overkill. मेरे हिसाब मुझे overkill लगता है. Like learning another rule just to identify two directions, you can literally memorize it. कि भाई current going out of the card will be anti-clockwise and current going into the card will generate clockwise movement. चार पांच वायर्स तो है नहीं, एक ही वायर है, दो ही वायर है, तो you can remember it. The current in the two wires, okay, cause the wire to repel each other. And beta, we know this. We already know this. मैंने यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ भी था कि if the currents are in the opposite direction, they will repel each other. Perfect. Explain how the current in one wire causes a force on the other wire. How the current on one wire causes a force on the other wire. Any ideas? Yes. Geniuses, any ideas? How the current in one wire causes a force on the other wire. Yes. Geniuses, any ideas बेटा? किसी जीनियस ने कोई आइडिया देना है? रिपल्जन तो होगी दूर है दिन, दिस विल हैपन, बट हाउ इज अ फोर्स जनरेटेड? सिंपल सी बात वो ये पूछा एग्जामिनर, हाउ इज अ फोर्स जनरेटेड बेटा. और अगर मैं होता आपकी जगह तो ये बहुत इजीली आंसर कर देता मैं. यप, हाउ इज अ फोर्स जनरेटेड? हाउ इज अ फोर्स जनरेटेड? You will say current in one wire, current in one wire interacts with the magnetic field of the other wire. देखो सुन लो. Current in one wire, current in one wire interacts with the magnetic field, interacts with the magnetic field of the other wire, of the other wire. सर व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय दैट? बेटा ये जो रेड वाली वायर का करंट है, दिस इंटरैक्ट्स विद द ब्लू वाली मैग्नेटिक फील्ड. दिस जनरेट्स अ फोर्स. दिस generates a force. This generates a force. This generates a force as a current experiences force in a magnetic field. Force in a magnetic field. Is this entire question clear to all of you? Yes. बताओ मुझे बेटा जरा. Is this entire question clear to all of you? Hmm. Table 7.1 shows four different nuclei. Perfect. State which two nuclei have the same number of protons. So I have told you guys that the number of protons is written where? At the bottom. Which two nuclei have the same number of protons? If you see uranium 235 and uranium 238 have the same number of protons. So you can write it here. Uranium 92 235 and uranium 92 238 have the same number of protons. Which two nuclei have the same number of neutrons? Now, for this, you will have to hard work a little bit more. You will have to calculate the number of neutrons that are same in two nucleuses. So, how will you do that? This is the proton number. Now, let me revise it here. If let's say this is a element, the number at the bottom is your proton number, and the number at the top is what? Proton number plus neutron. So we can write, हाँ either symbol लिख सकते हो और full name लिख सकते हो, doesn't matter, both of them will be correct. So what I was explaining here is, let's say if you have an element A, let's say if you have an element A, the number at the bottom will be the number of protons. The number at the top will be what? Neutrons plus protons. So now at the bottom you have 90. That means you have 90 protons. At the top you have 236. That is, you have 236 neutrons and protons. Can you calculate the number of neutrons in thorium 236? Yes. 236 minus 90, the number of neutrons comes out to be what? 236 minus 90, this comes out to be 146. This comes out to be 146. Now let's calculate the number of neutrons for protactinium 236. If you see, protactinium has 91 protons. 236 is neutrons plus proton. So neutrons will be what? 236 minus 91. This comes out to be 145. So the number of neutrons in protactinium is 145. Perfect. Let's do the same thing for uranium. The number of neutrons in uranium will be what? 235 minus 92. 235 minus 92. This comes out to be 143. This comes out to be 143. Now let's do the same for uranium 238. For uranium 238, what will be the number of neutrons? 238 minus 92. This comes out to be what? 238 minus 92. This comes out to be 146. This comes out to be 146. So which two nucleuses have the same number of neutrons? Which two nucleuses have the same number of neutrons? Thorium 236. So you can write it like this: TH 236 90, and which one? 238 92 uranium. State which two nuclei have the same number of nucleons. Now, what does the examiner want to refer by the term nucleons? Nucleons is a collective a name for neutrons and protons. Beta, nucleons is a collective name for neutrons and protons. So, where is neutrons plus proton written? Neutron plus protons is written at the top of the element. Which elements have the same neutrons plus protons? Thorium 236 and protactinium 236. So we can write it here. Thorium 236 90 and protactinium 236 91 Pa. Simple as that. Always remember nucleon is a collective term for both protons and neutrons. Please, please, please remember that. Let's further move ahead. A teacher uses a Geiger-Müller tube and a counter to measure the background radiation in the laboratory. The counter reads 20 counts per minute perfect. A radioactive source is then placed in front of the tube and the counter reads 420 counts per minute. State what is meant by background radiation. Okay. What is background radiation? Radiation that is always present in the surrounding or radiation that is naturally present in the surrounding without a source. So you can say radiation that is that is naturally naturally present in the surrounding surrounding without any source, without any radioactive source. Simple as that. Let's further move ahead. The measured count rate of 420 counts per minute can be corrected for background radiation. Calculate the corrected count rate for the source. So currently the count rate is 420. The background radiation is 20. What will be the corrected count rate? 420 minus 20. 400 counts per minute is your corrected count rate. Simple as that, nothing complicated. Let's further move ahead. The radioactive source has a half life of 45 minutes. Perfect. Determine the reading on the counter 90 minutes later. Now, this is a beautiful question. Just focus. So, the radioactive source has a half life of 45 minutes. Perfect. Currently, the counter is showing a reading of 420. But this is not the correct reading. The correct reading is what? Correct reading is what? 420 minus 20, that is 400. After 45 minutes, this reading of 400 will become 200. After another 45 minutes, this reading of 200 will become 100. 45 minutes here, 45 minutes here. So after 90 minutes, after 90 minutes, what should be your reading? 100. But what will you see on the counter? What will you see on the counter? Your counter will include background radiation. So 100 plus 20, this is equals to 120 counts per minute. 120 is your answer. Simple as that, nothing complicated. Let's further move ahead. Suggest why your answer in 3 is only an estimate. Why is this answer only an estimate, beta? Why is this answer only an estimate? Because emissions or radiations, emissions, or you can say radiations, emissions or the radiations can vary or fluctuate. Simple as that, nothing complicated. Let's further move ahead. Figure 7.1 shows different uses of three different types of radiations. Perfect. Draw a line on figure 7.1 from each of the radiations for each use of radiation to the type of radiation used. One line has already been drawn for you. Household fire alarm is using alpha particle radiation. Perfect. Each type of radiation can be used once, more than once, or not at all. Perfect. Eradicating food to kill bacteria. Basically, you have to sterilize food. What will you? You have to make food bacteria free. Which radiation will you use? Gamma radiation. Sterilization of equipment. Which radiation will you use? Again, gamma radiation. To measure the paper thickness, which radiation will you use? Beta particle. Simple as that. Is this entire question clear to all of you? पूरे क्वेश्चन में कोई सवाल है बच्चों, टॉप टू बॉटम मुझे पूछ लो. No need to hesitate. Very good. Chalo, let's see this question. This is an interesting question. Table 8.1. Table 8.1 shows three planets. Okay. Table 8.1 shows three planets: Mercury, Venus, and Earth. Perfect. Okay, so the time for one orbit of Sun, the time taken for Mercury to orbit around Sun is 88 days. For Venus, it is 220 days. For Earth, it is 365 days. This is the distance from the Sun. This is the average density. This is the gravitational field distance. Everything is pretty easy to understand. Figure 8.1, perfect, shows these planets in alignment with the Sun. Okay. Mercury, Venus, Earth, they are aligned with the Sun. They rotate around the Sun in the direction shown. Okay, they are rotating in the clockwise direction. Mark and label. Now, please listen carefully. Mark and label on figure 8.1 the position of the three planets 1110 days after the position shown in figure 8.1. So we have to mark the position of the planet 1110 days after the position that is shown in the diagram. Very, very easy. Very, very easy. Now, very easy. First of all, how will you how will you like analyze, or you can say how will you visualize what will happen? The first and foremost thing that you need to know is that whenever a planet completely rotates around the sun, whenever a planet completely rotates around the sun, how much angle is the planet covering? 360 degrees. Whenever a planet rotates completely around the sun, how much angle is the planet covering? 360 degree. Perfect. Now we have to draw the position of all these planets after 110 days. अच्छा भी ठीक है. After 110 days, we have to draw the position of each of the planet. So what will we take? First of all, let's take Mercury. Mercury has a time for one orbit that is 88 days. So Mercury rotates around the sun in 88 days. Mercury completes one rotation around the sun in 88 days. So you have 1110 days. In 1110 days, how many degrees will Mercury rotate? 1110 divided by 88 into 360 degree. If you don't understand this, just apply an even simpler logic. Just apply an even simpler logic. In 88 days, Mercury is taking 360 degrees ki rotation. In 110 days, Mercury will be rotating by X amount. Okay, so what will this X be equal to? 360 degree into 1110 divided by 88. This is for Mercury. Can anyone in the chat calculate the rotation for Mercury? Can anyone in the chat calculate the rotation for Mercury? The rotation for Mercury comes out to be 450 degrees. The rotation for Mercury comes out to be 450 degrees as far as I can see, or as far as I can remember when I solved this question earlier. The rotation of Mercury comes out to be 450 degrees. Perfect. 360 degrees of Mercury will be consumed in a complete rotation. The 360 degrees out of this 450 will be consumed to perform a complete rotation. What will be the remaining degrees? 90 degrees. How will Mercury look? How will Mercury look if we are at a rotation of 90 degrees from the sun? Somewhat like this. 1 second. If the Mercury rotates 90 degrees from the sun, it will look something like this. This is your Mercury. And it is also advisable to make this line as dotted. Perfect. Any ambiguities here you can ask. Yes, beta. कोई सवाल है यहाँ पे you can ask. This is how to calculate the rotation of Mercury. You can also easily calculate the rotation of all the planets. Literally, this is grade 8 mathematics. Let's do it with Venus. For Venus, you are taking 220 days to complete how many degrees? 360 degrees. 220 days will be utilized to complete a rotation of 360 degrees. What will be your rotation in 1110 days? Place an X here. X comes out to be what? 1110 into 360 divided by 220. This becomes 1, this becomes 2, this becomes 1, this becomes 180 degree. So your rotation for Venus is 180 degree. Where will you mark Venus? If you rotate from this point by 180 degree, you will end up here. So where will your rotation of Venus end up? Your rotation for Venus will end up exactly opposite like this. And it is important to put the labelings as well. It is also important to put the labelings as well and to keep the sizes similar to the sizes in the original diagram. Now let's do it for Earth. Let's do it for Earth. Earth take 365 days to rotate 360 degrees. How many degrees will be rotated in 110 days? Place an X here. X is equals to 360 into 1110 divided by 365. Yeah. Let's calculate it. 360 into 1110 and divided by 365. This answer comes out to be 108. 108.5 degrees. Now 108.5 degrees lies between the Venus and Mercury, maybe somewhere here. Maybe somewhere here. This is your Earth. Simple diagram. Literally, you get 3 marks for this in Olympics. I have never seen a simpler question than this. Chalo, let's move ahead. Each of the three planets have a similar average density perfect. Suggest why the gravitational field strength at the surface of Mercury is much smaller than at the surface of Venus. So we have to tell why the gravitational field strength at why the gravitational field strength at the surface of Mercury is much smaller than the gravitational field strength at the surface of Venus. Very, very, very easy to answer. What will you say? What will you say? Mercury has a smaller mass. You can say Mercury has a smaller mass. Mercury has a smaller mass. A smaller mass of Mercury. An object of weight 37 Newton on the surface of Mercury. Perfect. Calculate its weight on the surface of Earth. Okay. Show your working. So if an object has a weight of 37 Newton on Mercury, what is the gravitational field strength on Mercury? If you analyze the gravitational field strength on Mercury is what? 3.7. Perfect. So you can say at Mercury, your weight is 37 Newton. Gravitational field strength is 3.7. Can you calculate the mass? Yes. Weight is equals to mg. Weight is 37 is equals to m into 3.7. Divide it. Mass comes out to be 10 kg. But you don't have to calculate the mass. You have to calculate the weight on Earth. So on Earth, what will your weight be equal to? Weight is equals to mass into gravitational field strength. Mass is 10. Now, what is the gravitational field strength on Earth? The gravitational field strength on Earth is 9.8 multiplied by 9.8. Simple as that. Your weight comes out to be 98 Newton. Simple as that. State what is meant by a moon. State what is meant by a moon. A natural orbit. A natural object that orbits around the planet. You can say a natural object that orbits around the planet. Simple as that, nothing complicated. If you remember, we termed moon as natural satellite as well. Yes, very good. Let's further move ahead. The sun will eventually run out of hydrogen. Perfect. The sun will eventually run out of hydrogen. Describe what happens to the sun when the hydrogen runs out. Describe what happens to the sun when hydrogen runs out. So, here, if you are a good student, you will remember one thing. Here, if you are a good student, you will remember one thing. Sun is a red giant star. Whenever hydrogen finishes up in a red giant star, whenever hydrogen finishes up in a red giant star, what happens? Any ideas? You will say, first of all, so you will state that as the hydrogen as hydrogen finishes, or you can say hydrogen runs out, the sun, the sun expands into a red giant star. The sun expands into a red giant star. Simple as that. What will you further say? What will you further say? Here, or you can say, or let me write a good answer here. You can say, in the red giant, in the red giant star, helium molecules fuse to form beryllium. Beryllium. Simple. Then what will you say further? Then what will you say further? And what will you say further? As helium runs out, this is an A star answer. As helium runs out, a red giant star converts into a planetary nebula. Converts into a planetary nebula and forms a white dwarf. Simple as that, nothing complicated here. This marks the end of this paper.